In order to graph an ellipse, first of all, your equation has to be in standard form. So for number 1, this equation is already in standard form. For an ellipse, you're going to see that form of x minus h squared, y minus k squared, over some numbers, make sure it's equal to 1. That means it's in standard form. So this one is. I will provide, and this is provided on your assignment, it will be provided on the review, on the quiz. I will provide the blanks that you need to fill in for what you need to find in order to make your graph. And you're finding this information using the formulas on your sheet. So what you have to identify first, before you start using formulas, you have to identify if the ellipse is horizontal or vertical. And in order to identify that, you have to identify the denominators of those fractions, which one is a squared and which one is b squared, for an ellipse. Because a ties into your major axis, which is longer, your a squared is always greater than your b squared for an ellipse. A squared is the larger number. So that means for this ellipse in number 1, a squared is 64, b squared is 28. And therefore, is this ellipse horizontal or vertical based on where a squared and b squared are? It's vertical. So identify that first so you know what formulas to use to find your vertices and your covertices and your foci. Usually then what I'll identify as well is to use any of those formulas, you need to know H, K, A, and B. So in this formula, what is your H value? 5, positive 5. What is K? Negative 1. And then if A squared is 64, I know that A is the square root of 64, so A is 8. B squared is 28, so B is going to be the square root of 28. I do want you, when you're graphing, to get a decimal approximation because we'll need to be plotting points that involve that B value. So if I take the square root of 28, and you can round to either 2 or 3 decimal places, that doesn't matter to me. I'll round to 2. So B is approximately 5.29. But if you had 5.3, that would be fine too. Just don't round it to the nearest whole number. Okay, and then now I have everything identified that I can use my formulas to find the characteristics of this graph. So the center is HK, so I know that is 5, 8, or 5, negative 1, sorry, I was looking at A, 5, negative 1. And I'm going to plot the center right away. Bless you. Bless you. So center is HK. The length of the major axis, looking at your formulas, length of the major axis is 2 times A. And if A is 8, that means the length of the major axis is 16 units long. And the length of the minor axis is 2 times B. So that would be 2 times 5.29 approximately. So about 10.58 units long. And those we don't need to mark on the graph. I just want to see that you're able to find the lengths of those 2 axes. But now for the vertices, covertices, and foci, all 6 of these points should be plotted on your graph. Your ellipse actually goes through the vertices and covertices. Your foci should be inside of your ellipse. So if they end up outside, something went wrong. So vertices, if the ellipse is vertical, one of your vertices, I'm just going to write the formulas on here underneath. You wouldn't have to. I just want you to see where everything's coming from. These are off of your graphic organizer. So the top vertex, since the vertices will be up and down if it's vertical, is the ordered pair H and then K plus A for the Y value. The other one is hk minus a for the y value. So that means one of my vertices is 5, and then k plus a, negative 1 plus 8 is 7. So 5, 7 is my top vertex. And then 5k minus a, so negative 1 minus 8 is negative 9. That's my other vertex. So I can plot both of those points. Here's another way that you can plot your vertices as well. So you could either find what the ordered pairs should be first and then plot them, or what you could do is plot them and then write down what they are, because remember, A is the distance from the center to a vertex. So if I start at the center and I go, in this case it's vertical, so I would go up and down. If I go up 8, I would be at 5, 7. And if I go down 8 from the center, I am at 5, negative 9. Okay, so you can either find them first, then plot them, or plot them and then write them down, or have some sort of combination, whatever you'd like to do. But I'm just trying to make that connection that A is that distance from the center to a vertex. All right, then for the covertices, I'll do the same thing. I'll use the formulas, even though for a covertex, on a vertical ellipse, those are to the left and the right of the center. So this means I would be going to the left 5.29 units and then to the right 5.29 units to plot my vertices. Or I can use the formulas. So the formula for the leftmost vertex is h minus b for the x-coordinate, and then k for the y-coordinate, and then h plus b for the x-coordinate, k for the y-coordinate for the rightmost one. So h minus b would be 5 minus 5.29. Yep. So negative 0.29, and then k is negative 1. And then h plus b, 5 plus 5.29 would be 10.29, and then negative 1 for the rightmost one. But like I said, if you actually went to the left 5.29 and to the right 5.29, you would see those are the points that you're at. Once you have the vertices and covertices, we still need to find the foci, and I do want you to plot those on your graph. But once you have the vertices and covertices, you can actually draw the ellipse in. So the ellipse is through those 4 points. Just make it seem like it's rounded like an ellipse and not, doesn't have sharp corners like a diamond. Okay, and like I said, your foci, when we find these should end up inside of your ellipse. If you look at your graphic organizer, they should be up and down from your center, so on the same axis as your vertices. If they end up outside, something went wrong. In order to plot the foci, I'm going to write down the formulas for the two coordinates. So the top focus would have the formula h and then k plus c, and the other one is h, k minus c. So in order to find the foci, we need to find c. How do we find c? Yes, so that will give us, I kind of heard a combination. So c squared is a squared minus b squared. So I know a squared is 64 minus b squared is 28. So c squared equals 64 minus 28 is 36. Therefore, c is equal to 6. Okay, so I can use these formulas, which I will, But realize also C is the distance from the center to a focus. So from the center, I could also go up 6 and down 6 to plot both of my foci, as long as I'm still writing down what points they are. So again, multiple ways to get the points, understanding what the graph means and what the values mean. So one focus is going to be at 5, and then K plus C is negative 1 plus 6, so 5, 5. The other one is at 5, K minus C is negative 7. And I should see that from the center, if I do go up 5, or up 6, I'm sorry. Up a distance of C, up 6, and then down 6. I am at 5, 5, and 5, negative 7. And the foci are both inside of the ellipse like they should be. So when you're done, just compare your graph and make sure it seems like your points are where they should be based on the way you said, or based on the orientation it had. If it's vertical, make sure it looks right. You have that diagram on your graphic organizer. Okay, questions on that one? Okay, then example 2, this equation is not in standard form. So I'm going to go through with you how to get an equation like this into the standard form for an ellipse. Once we get the standard form, I'm actually going to have you graph it. Make sure you can graph this without me on your own. Getting an ellipse in standard form is similar to how we got equations of circles in standard form. So what you want to do is look at your equation, any constant terms that you have, like this 144, get that to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 144 from both sides. And then also, you want to be able to group your x's and your y's together. So I'm going to rearrange the other 4 terms I'm left with. I'm going to switch those 2 middle terms so I have my x's written together and my y's written together. So 9x squared plus 72x plus 25y squared minus 150y, and then equals negative 144. And in order to get those quantities that are being squared for x and y, we're going to have to complete the square for both. So I'm going to group the x's, group the y's. However, before I complete the square for either of these, what do we have to do before we can complete the square? Yep. Yes, GCF kind of, but you don't take out the variable. So you would have to take out the coefficient that's in front of the x squared for the x's and in front of the y squared for the y's. So for the x's, I have to take out a 9, and I'm left with x squared plus 72 divided by 9 is 8, so x squared plus 8x. I'm going to put a plus blank right away because I'll be completing the square. And then plus, for the y's, I have to take out a 25. I'd have y squared minus 150 divided by 25 is 6, thank you. So minus 6y, and then plus blank for completing the square equals negative 144. If I'm adding 2 things to the left side, I have to add 2 quantities to the right side as well. So what value would I have to complete the square for x? Or how do I find it? Yep, b divided by 2 squared. So for the x's, 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. What value would get added to the other side? Yep, 16 times 9. So this 16 has to be multiplied by the 9. 16 times 9 is 144. But if you want to make a note where that 144 came from, 9 times 16. So now that you do have a number in front, make sure that you get, or you multiply those 2 when you're adding it to the other side. And then for the y's, I have negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. So I have to multiply 9 by 25, and that's 225. So 225 gets added to the other side. Okay, and then once you've completed the square, these are perfect square trinomials, you factor them. So I have 9 times, what quantity squared will I have for x? X plus what? I'm not sure if I'm hearing multiple numbers right now. What is this in factored form? X plus 4, yes. X plus 4 quantity squared. And then I have plus 25 times, what about for the y's? Yes, but with y. So y minus 3.
Y minus.
Yep. Quantity squared equals. On the right side, I just combine these terms. The negative and positive 144s cancel, so I just have 225. Is this in standard form right now? I see some no's because the right side must equal 1. How do I get this to equal 1? You could subtract 224, but we're not going to. Divide by 225. Because if you look at your standard form, you see that you should have some fractions on the left side as well. So you divide everything by 225. And now what you're doing with these two fractions, because if you look at your standard form on your sheet, you don't have numbers written in front of the quantities that are being squared. So the 9 over 225 and 25 over 225 should simplify nicely. So 9 over 225, if I take 225 divided by 9, that equals 25. So that means this 9 cancels to just be a 1. This denominator is now a 25. So I have the quantity x plus 4 squared over 25. I don't have to write the 1 that's in front, the plus sign. Same thing with the 25 over 225. I know if I divide by 25, I'll get 9. So the 25 would be a 1, 225 on the bottom would be a 9. So I would have y minus 3 quantity squared over 9, and then equals 1. So this is my standard form. And then from here, before I let you graph, I just want to make sure we're graphing the right thing. So first of all, is this ellipse going to be horizontal or vertical? Horizontal, yes. So the larger number, the 25, that is your a squared. B squared is 9. So this is horizontal. What is h? Yep, -4. What is k? 3. What is a? 5. B is 3. Okay, I just want to make sure now graph. Make sure you're using the horizontal ellipse formulas if you're using the formulas. But I wanted to make sure you had all of the right information so we can really just check if your graph is correct. So go ahead and graph. I'll come around and check what you have or answer questions. I'll give you a chance to graph one of these without me.